Hello everyone, I'm Rebecca from Rebecca's Beautiful ASMR Addiction, and every once in a while I like to take these vintage magazines and go through them with y'all. I got this one in particular from an antique mall in Tennessee. It's about the Texas Sniper, and it's August 12th, 1966, and it was only 35 cents at the time. Wow. So store window shattered by bullets fired from tower in background by Charles Whitman. So, Life magazine, let's go to it here, shall we? Viceroy's got the taste that's right any time of the day. That's the thing about the 1960s. Everybody was smoking. That's a gross generality, I know, but it definitely was not frowned upon. Okay. Now, drivers under the age of 25 have until August 31st to enter Ford Motor Company's Safe Driving Incentive Program. I am not going to read the editor's note. Here's an editorial. Our air and water can be made clean. There's a good chance that 1966 will be remembered as the year when Americans finally got fed up with pollution. For 350 years, we have poured filth into every body of water that we control and into the air above. Now voters are proving at the polls that they have had enough, and what's more, they are assuming correctly that it is technically and financially feasible to do something about pollution problems long considered insoluble. Yes, I actually remember about that time in 1966. I was only 5 years old, but I remember when I was getting older, the big push against people throwing litter out of their windows. And I remember just thinking, yes, I'm so glad. I do feel like we need to keep our water and our air clean to the best of our ability within reason. Wonder Bread Wonder helps build strong bodies. Now, Wonder Bread, by now we've all discovered, is just not the best, healthiest kind of bread for us to eat. But I absolutely love Hostess fruit pies. Go on safari and spend a night at treetops when you quit working. How? Well, you gotta get money back life insurance. That's a stretch, but put your hand over the gray half and see how much younger I look. Okay, so an ad for men's hair dye. Okay, let's do it. Let's put our hands over. I say first, let's go gray. Right, that's how old he looks. That's how he is normal. Now, let's do this. I have to say that is a very amazing change. Just wow. I think if I were a man, well, men or women, I just don't think I can use hair color because I actually like the color of my hair. I've thought about putting in highlights, but so much money. Who says cocktails are an indoor sport? I recognize that actor's face from somewhere. Probably a TV show I watched back in the 60s or 70s. Man size, one wide, dry stroke. Daily stops perspiration odor. Okay, so anyway, this is my husband's deodorant, and I'm not kidding. It smells so good. And I don't know if they've changed the fragrance of it since way back in 1966, but I will always ask him to use that deodorant because it smells so good. This one says it's a book review, a black comedy to offend everyone. John Barth is more than a novelist. At 36, he's a cult. This is a result of the softweed factor. His novel about a 17th century existentialist poet and tobacco peddler. So that's a book review. Barth works his satirical Cold War correspondence to a sweat. Giles Goat Boy is the novel with something to offend everyone. So the book is called Giles Goat Boy. It's a satirical novel or book. How 267 for the National Observer changed our lives. That's an advertisement for a newspaper. Movie review. Mr. Ray's Quiet Cup of Darjeeling. Satyajit Ray, the noted Indian director, is up to his usual lack of tricks in his latest film. Once again, as in his Apu trilogy, he has dared to make a movie of such stately pace and conventionality of imagery that it and the audience always teeters on the brink of boredom. Ooh, that is a very negative movie review. Let's not keep reading it. That's pretty. Conversation piece, Lady Scott toilet paper. What a beautiful bathroom that must be. I'd go for it, except I really hate tile. I love tile, but I hate cleaning it. Ever notice how when products compete with each other, they get better? Joe's hot dogs, Max's foot-long hot dogs. Right for a booklet that tells how competition makes things better. It's a Brown Names Foundation. Okay, never heard of that either. Buy a home with the stars in the windows. You'll never need storm windows. So this must be an emblem. You get lower heating bills, warmer rooms in winter, less fogging and frost. So PPG makes the glass that makes the difference. Pittsburgh Plate Glass Company. So they're claiming that if you get their windows with this emblem in it, you will not need to get storm windows. And of course, I am sure that you don't actually have to have those on the windows. That's just a slight exaggeration. Lowest fares on Continental. Don't hold your breath. No airline has a corner on lowest fares. Okay. Oh, my book's falling apart. A summer menu by two British cooks. Theater review. Okay. Other travelers' checks are every bit as good as First National City Banks until you lose them. So So they're saying they'll replace your traveler's checks. All you need is your bedroom when you buy this complete Sealy supersize ensemble. You know what? Mattresses have gotten more and more comfortable over the years. Dial a sensational sideburn Remington. These have gotten better over the years as well. Letters to the editor. Dear sirs, I would like to express my pleasure in your article and pictures on pregnancy and birth. For me, you have recaptured many memories of the birth of our daughter. No, here's an objection. Sir, I object to your title concerning James Dickey, the unlikeliest poet. By all odds, the likeliest authentic American poet we've waited so long to hear. It is sad that this, the world's greatest democracy, produces such a tiny trickle of genuine poets. Wow. I'm not going to go there. Sears. It says chip. What does that mean? Also, he's proud to be a chip off the old block. Oh, okay. Loudon Wainwright, the view from here. Waves of summers, past and present. I count my years and summers. Not that the other seasons are without recollections of their own peaks and depressions in the landscape of one's self. Yet summer alone has always seemed the most vivid of seasons. A long, rich stop in the drab year, the time of the biggest possibilities and promises, and the fact that many of the promises of each summer are not kept leaves me with undiminished hope for the next one. There is something in most summers now that brings back childhood feelings, and these returned sharply the first time I took my older boy, then about 10, to camp. Oh yes, me too. Summer camp is just, oh, I wish everybody could go to a summer camp. I have hated summer the whole time I was in Tennessee. And that was almost 16 years. Now I'm back home in California, and yay for summer. No mosquitoes, trips to the lake, picnics. I'm so happy to be back in California. Under the clock, a sniper with 31 minutes to live. And this is the main article, and I'll spend a little time on this. On the 29th floor observation platform of the administration building, which is here, 280 feet above the University of Texas campus in Austin, a puff of dust and smoke rises during the exchange of fire between police officers and sniper Charles Whitman, shielded by the parapet as bystanders on the ground crouch behind cars for protection. Wow. Okay. Here's a very amazing pictorial. Pinned down on the shaded campus, under fire, a wounded man is loaded into an ambulance as others, pinned down by the fuselage, take cover. Below, a woman peers at the tower through binoculars. Look at that fashion statement right there. I know this is a serious article, but I'm looking at the clothes. It's just such a blast from the past here. See, they're loading up a fatality there. Person who was shot. Well, this is quite a drama. Back in 1966, it was less prevalent, so it was a major happening. Then, suddenly, the madness was ended. Finally, 90 minutes of indiscriminate slaughter came to an end. So did the life of Charles Whitman, gunned down by a policeman, overcome. See, they said the policeman. He's on the right. This is the policeman. Overcome by the monstrous event. When Whitman dollied an arms-laden trunk across the lobby of the administration building, he had already killed his wife and his mother. Wow, before he even went out to do this. Before he died, he killed 12 more and wounded 31, the most savage one-man rampage in the history of American crime. What Whitman was doing was so outrageous, so hard to grasp, that people could not believe it. Amid the spanging gunfire, I've never heard the word spanging. Amid the spanging gunfire, students ambled to Chambers restaurant as on any other summer day. Girls went on admiring the clothes in the windows of the co-ed shop. Browsers at the university news glanced up, but only briefly, from their books. A boy and a girl were killed in front of a bookstore. When a group of gawkers gathered across the street, Whitman struck again, wounding 3. A man died when he bent to help a pregnant woman. Her child was stillborn. A store manager was skeptical as 3 boys crawled in from the sidewalk, moaning. "We're across the street from a big university," she said later, "and I wasn't about to fall for that. And then I saw the blood. So much blood." The cop who ended it, Patrolman Ramiro Martinez Wright, is racked with emotion as he tells how he killed Whitman, who lies sprawled above when he fell on observation platform. The sniper's victim. Stunned onlookers watch officers remove the body of a woman who was killed when she came upon Whitman in the tower before he took aim at people below. So there was a woman that came up on the sniper and he killed her first. The killer's arsenal, his victims, and where they fell. There was a Paul Sontag, Claudia Rutt, Robert Boyer, Billy Speed, Roy Schmidt, Edna Townsley, Marguerite Lamport, Mark Gabor, Thomas Ekman, Harry Walchuk, Thomas Ashton, Thomas Carr. Now, this was 1966 when all these people fell to the sniper, and therefore I believe there are probably brothers and sisters who are still alive who remember their loved ones. If you're hearing my video, I just want to say, wow, I don't know what to say. I just want to acknowledge by naming these names your loss. Whitman's arsenal, like a gun collector's museum, Whitman's weapons and supplies are exhibited in the Austin police lineup. Anything that boy could see, he could shoot, Whitman's father said after the massacre. Those guns aren't to blame for anything, he says. Those guns are not to blame for anything. Interesting that he said that. 2 rifles, pistol case, and a camera in foreground were found in Whitman's home. He also took along an alarm clock and can of peaches, sausages. So he didn't kill his father. Wonder where he was at the time. That's the map of all the deaths, but it's too small for me to make out or try to correspond for you. This aerial view of the University of Texas looking east from Guadalupe Street. Okay. Charlie Whitman, the Eagle Scout who grew up with a tortured mind. Charles J. Whitman was a man who carefully hid himself behind a sunny face of good nature. So we're going to hear a little bit about the killer, the sniper. Scores of people were fond of him, but probably only one really who knew him well. She was married to him, and she is dead. When Whitman came down, very dead, from the tower on a cart, his friends were incredulous. A slight, thoughtful boy named Gary Boyd, who had shared classes with Whitman, said, "That's not the Charlie Whitman I knew. When he got up there, he was somebody else." Boyd was right. The Charlie Whitman he knew did not exist. Boyd saw Whitman as a real all-America boy. He was big, strong, handsome, neat, hard-working. He was pleasant to be around and interesting to talk with. He spoke ill of no one, except occasionally his father, and he tried to speak well of many people. His grades were excellent. He enjoyed civic work, loved his wife, admired his professors, and seemed to have no enemies. But he was also a violent man. He bit his nails to the quick and perspired rings of sweat on the coldest days. He was a meticulous perfectionist. Ooh, yeah. He worked on engineering projects with passionate intensity, but did not care for engineering or intend to remain in it. What he said in deep, intimate conversations seemed to change from person to person. There appears no question that at the end he hated his powerful, dominant father. Late one night he sat in the home of Barton D. Riley, an Austin architect and lecturer in the UT School of Engineering. "If my father walked in that door right now," he said, "I would kill him." Charles Riley said, "You don't mean that." "I certainly do," said Whitman. Yet at about this same time, the elder Whitman came to Austin to visit. Charles introduced him to A.J. Vinicic, an Austin real estate man on whose recommendation Charles had become scoutmaster of a local troop. The two older men had a long, pleasant conversation, and Vinicic was astounded to learn after the violence that Charles had disliked his father. In school, Whitman's attitudes changed. He shifted from straight engineering to architectural engineering. His grades improved radically, so did his general attitude. Okay. Oh, that's a long article talking all about who he was, and we see that he was pretty tortured emotionally. A lot of us are, that it's not an excuse, but everybody has different reactions to the pressure cookers that they're put in. Whitman's faculty advisor, meanwhile, was alarmed. He called Whitman in and concluded that his troubles were largely financial. Okay, Fisk noticed something that had been present all day. Far from showing the agony of a man under great stress, Whitman was calm. That night, Fisk called Barton Riley. Riley is 41, muscular, and ex-Marine who was at Iwo Jima. He can be tough when he chooses, but he called Whitman. "This is ridiculous," he snapped. "You're not going to do it." Oh, well. Riley told Whitman to skip the classes he had under Riley until he caught up on the others. The next day, Whitman saw Riley. He grinned. "Thank you, sir," he said. Okay, that's all circumstantial, logistical. From toddler to U.S. Marine, he showed an easy familiarity with guns. On the Thursday before the deadly Monday, a student named Tom Brightman borrowed Whitman's classroom notes. Whitman was gracious as usual, but told Brightman he needed to study them himself that night. The exchange indicates that on Thursday, Whitman was still a serious student. believe now that the death started. Okay. Raised with guns, Whitman held 2 of his father's rifles for a picture when he was 2. At 17, his brothers, Charlie, posed a year later with a rifle. Yeah, so he's always had exposure to guns. Okay. The next afternoon, with the dead and wounded. Okay. Whitman was to pick up Kathy at 10 p.m. She had worked a split shift. This is his wife. And in the morning and again at night in her summer job at the telephone company. And in the interval, he had taken her to dinner and to a movie. It was obvious they had had a delightful time together. Twice Whitman began a sentence he did not finish. It's a shame, he said, that she should have to work all day and then come home too. They left, and Whitman drove away to pick up Kathy. Within a few hours, his mother in her apartment was dead. In a few hours more, Kathy was dead. That's so crazy. I mean, he's just like life as usual all the way up to that point. They left, and Whitman the next afternoon, with the dead and wounded scattered like leaves on the ground, Larry Fess crouched by a building and wondered, as did everyone else on the campus, who in God's name was up there. The name of Charlie Whitman flashed across his mind, and he was instantly ashamed that he could think such a thing of a friend. When it was over, Larry saw Charlie's body carried from the tower. The consensus is that either nobody really knew Charles Whitman, or he just snapped. I don't know. It sounds like it was planned. There are no answers. Getting upstaged by the Union wasn't in this scenario. Lyndon Johnson is the Cecil B. DeMille of American politics. The presidency. I'm not going to read that. AC oil filters. It's funny, Wet n Wild. That's now the name of a cosmetic company. But they're saying the 7-Up is Wet n Wild. Bracing, crisp, unforgettable. Well, you know, this is August, so it's summertime. Psychiatrist in the chips. Burn rakes in a poker pot below. He works at a typewriter rigged for volume production. If you play, you might as well play to win. Losers, says Dr. Eric Byrne, spend their lives thinking about what they're going to do. They rarely enjoy doing what they're doing as they do it. Losers don't know when to stop playing those sex and life games to which the hip-talking California psychiatrist gave catchy titles. Deader, Kick Me, Ain't It Awful, in his book, Games People Play. This phenomenally best-selling manual of Bernard burned over Freud. Okay, so what are we talking about here? Things that made him sort of... Alright, so what did he do? I guess he wrote a book. Talks about letting out your inner child and being a winner. I'd have to do more investigation, because that article was rather cryptic, in my opinion. Keys to a happy life. Yes, no, and wow. Oh, it's still, Byrne continued. My business, says Eric Byrne, is turning frogs into princes. Hardly a conventional definition of okay, he's a psychiatrist. He is twice divorced and the father of 6. He commutes twice a week between a bachelor bungalow in Carmel, where he obligingly keeps his 11-year-old son's tap drums for frequent practice. Okay, so this is just a little bit about him and his book. He's a psychiatrist. Never heard of him. I was too young. Sculptures in Motion, Spirited Machines, Sculptures in Motion, Spirited Machines, thrust kinetic art to new popularity. These guys should have seen our new, what's it called? Punk something. Oh man, I'm terrible at that. Steampunk. That's what this reminds me of a little bit. Okay, fleeting patterns that never repeat. It's a sculpture. Okay. Yeah. This kind of stuff is not my idea of art, and that's just a personal opinion. No offense. I don't like it. Always verging on breakdown. So more gadget art. A good janitor becomes as important as a curator. Kinetic art creates special and challenging maintenance problems. No doubt. This is the drink that is. Give a Smirnoff Mule party. This guy looks familiar, like he was in movies later. Her too. You know what, I'll bet these are all actors and actresses. Open up an orange and see sunshine. Oh, you bet. Sun-kissed oranges. That is so beautiful. That is such a just gorgeous picture. So California. Although I don't know where Sunkist comes from. Oh, it says Arizona and California. Yeah, that's why it's so nostalgic for me. The Brain Trust 8 artist is kinetic. We're still on that kinetic stuff. Let's get out of there. The credibility gap widens in Massillon, Ohio. A town's troubled mood as a war comes home. The somber sight of a military burial stops a shirtless boy on an Ohio sidewalk. A few minutes later, a father, mute with grief, grips the flag just removed from the coffin of his son, the first in his town to die in Vietnam. In such moments of public tribute and private anguish, the demands of a far-off war have come home to the American people. The death of our young men, President Johnson has said repeatedly, is freedom's tragic price. There is no absence of sympathy for the president's burden as he seeks to quiet the nation's fears, soothe its angers, and illumine its goals in the light of Vietnam and other troubles. Inflation, racial violence, strikes, which the war engenders or accelerates. But there is growing doubt concerning the president's candor in defining his administration's position. Not only are many Americans not comforted by what they are being told, in many instances they simply do not believe it. This so-called credibility gap has become an issue in itself, possibly the biggest one confronting Lyndon Johnson. To measure the depth of the credibility gap, Life reporters spent 2.5 weeks in Massillon, Ohio, a town of 31,000 people whose economy, like America, is prospering from a conflict in which its sons are being killed. Amidst a family's grief, aching doubt. Yes, so many people felt like they lost their loved ones on a war was not credible. Questions deeply felt but until now unspoken come rushing at the family of PFC Robert Damien Herm Jr. Words Jr. They ask, why did this have to happen? You don't know what to say to them, said Herm's older brother. I just never dreamed he wouldn't come back. I think most people feel that way when they send their sons off to war. Massillon, the high price of prosperity. Massillon, like many small cities in the country's heartland, is a blend of payroll town and rural trade center, of boisterism and nostalgia for the past, of complacency, generosity, bigotry, progress, and decay, perhaps best known for its famous high school football teams, the Massillon Tigers. The bustling factory town was once an Ohio canal port and the home of General Coxey, who marched an army of unemployed from Massillon to Washington during the Depression of 1894. So the town is prospering because of the war, but it's costing them their sons. That's the general idea. The 1000 block of Massillon's Roosevelt Street, where Mayor William J. Keene lives, might be considered typical of any comfortable neighborhood, reasonably prosperous and diverse in politics, religions, occupations, and outlooks. A recent day when President Johnson held a televised press conference, life correspondents spent an hour during and after the telecast with 6 families who live on the block. Their aim was to note their instant reactions, both to the president himself and what he had to say. The sampling clearly indicated a credibility gap. In five homes, opinions of the president ranged from unflattering to hostile. Oh dear. Down through the ages, we've always had people who very much disliked our presidents, whoever they were. We have to beat them down, it says here. I do support the country, says Tom Girder Jr., but I don't support President Johnson. In his misgivings over the president's Vietnam policies, the arch-conservative Steele executive, who is Massillon's fiercest exponent of total war escalation, finds himself surprisingly aligned with the majority of his townspeople. I personally think all-out bombing of North Vietnam would induce them to quit. Wow. Eldon Workinger, 20, a lanky, devout Massillon farm boy, has little in common with Tom Girdler, that guy, than basic patriotism and a desire for the war to end. Eldon would no more burn his draft card or picket the White House than he would drink liquor or smoke cigarettes. Yet a year ago, he became a conscientious objector. I was brought up to believe thou shalt not kill, he explains in a slow, flat accent. His reasons for refusing to serve reflect an uncertainty over Vietnam he shares with many Massillon youths. Yeah. Another son called to duty. Where are you going? Are you scared? Are you going to turn your watch to Vietnam time? Tim answered a barrage of questions like these from Ted Lloyd. I guess that was young children as he's going off to war. Tim shot targets with a P-38 his father got during World War II. When I was in the Army, I thought I did all the fighting for my family. I never thought my kids would have to go. When Tim went to college, we missed him, but this is a different kind of missing. Tim is going where there's a good chance he'll be killed. It must have been hard to say goodbye to this young man. Tim, no doubt. Splashy open season on deer. What? A ranger makes look at he's like, look, he's probably saving him. Oh yeah, because there's, I don't know what that, okay, a ranger makes a belt buster dive toward a swimming deer. Awaiting arrival of a boat, a ranger holds a struggling doe below. At lower right, another rescuer cradles a young buck. Its head is in rags to protect the ranger from its small, sharp antlers. Florida was in the midst of one of the wildest and wettest deer hunts ever held, but for once the deer stood to benefit. The east central section of the Everglades swamp lay submerged by a flood, and any deer that couldn't be rescued was almost sure to starve or drown. Ironically, Florida's wildlife had just been through another disaster, a 4-year drought, which killed off thousands of swamp creatures. But this spring the rains came, and in June alone there was a 19-inch rainfall, more than double the normal amount. Wow. So they had 150 deers rescued so far. Goodness gracious. The Moors killers. Minds can also be twisted by a climate of license. Who's to blame when a murderer strikes? For no apparent reason, a Texas student goes on a murderous rampage. A Chicago drifter kills 8 nurses. The Englishman and woman shown above slay 2 children whose bodies are found on these moors. On the following pages, British novelist Pamela Hansford Johnson, wife of author C.P. Snow, inspects the personal violence in our world and challenges all of us with a moral problem as weighty as Everest. Now, those people, I don't know if they're still alive in this day and age, but it is worse. In ghastly transcripts, a test of our times. That's the secret of the Moors. You know, I think we've read enough about murder. Wow. The killers read about orgies of torture and brutality. Wow. The Attorney General is questioning Brady about the books and the suitcases. Orgies of torture and brutality, history of torture throughout the ages, sexual anomalies, cradle of erotica, and more. The Attorney General does not wish to read the titles aloud. He simply hands Brady a list of the books and asks, "They are all squalid, pornographic books?" Brady, "They cannot be called pornography. They can be bought at any bookstall. They are dirty books, are they not?" "It depends," Brady says, "on the dirty minds." "This was the atmosphere of your mind?" "No." Soon Brady is sitting impassive. What is he thinking? What are they both thinking? It is almost impossible to imagine. So they were trying to build a case against one of the murderers based on the literature that they read. I'm not going to open that up to debate on my channel, and I won't express my opinion about that, but I do have one. Very surely I do. Okay, the badness rubbed off. Everyone felt unclean. They're still going on about the books here. It says the sale of such books and the influence they may have had on Hindley and Brady raises a moral question. How far, if at all, does our new permissive revolution contribute to frightfulness such as this? Are all books fit to be read by all men? To this I have to reply, no. I have seen Kraft Ebbing in paper book and English Railways bookstall. This is a valuable book for specialists. It is no more suitable for relatively cheap mass reproduction than half the volumes in any medical library, which, though not likely to lead to crime, would certainly induce widespread hypochondria. That's interesting. Here I know I am walking on eggshells. Eggs. Recently in Indianapolis, a housewife, her daughter aged 17 and 15, her son aged 13, and two neighborhood boys, both 15, beat, starved, branded, scalded, and ultimately murdered a comely, docile girl whom the housewife had taken into her family. I do not for a moment imagine that this family rejoiced in a library like Brady's, yet how much of violence, of permitted depravity, had they picked up out of the very air. There are few intellectuals indeed who will lend themselves to serious discussion of whether by mass communications we are not poisoning the air, of whether due to a stench some people die, children brutally killed in Hattersley or Indianapolis, or 8 nurses slaughtered in Chicago. What is liberty worth without self-control? That's a very, very good question. What is liberty worth without self-control? Freedom comes with a price. You know that ASMR is autonomous sensory meridian response. And the word autonomous basically means self-governed. And it is everyone's inalienable right to govern themselves. And that freedom absolutely calls for self-control and mutual concern for one another. Salad with a briny bite. Who's not riding the price of skyrocket? See, our freedom, it's not given to us to just do whatever the heck we feel like doing. Our freedom has a price and a responsibility, but it is worth it to have it. We don't want. Well, I'm not going to go on anymore. Catty-cornered billiards. I did not realize that this magazine was going to be so intense, you guys, or bring up such philosophical questions, but there it is. I hope most of you fell asleep before we got into the heavy stuff, but it was all heavy, and that's all there is to it. In any case, I am so happy to have shared this little blast from the past with you, and I thank you for joining me. Gives you some sobriety and some things to think about, along with the things that are happening in our lives right now.